Parliamentary reporters dictation number 19 at the speed of 140 words per minute from Kailash Chandra shortened transcription number 194-195. Last 5 seconds. Ready. Start. Turning point to internal resources for the plan. I do not propose here to offer any detailed comments on particular tax measures or on the particular criticisms as those offered by honorable members. But I wish to make it clear that the problem before us is as much of internal resources as of external resources. The only difference between the two is in terms of the degree of freedom of action that we ourselves enjoy in regard to them, because it is possible for us to raise internal resources provided a large measure of public support is coming behind this. It would not be possible even so to raise external resources, and that is the basic distinction between the two types of resources that we need. I have said on a number of occasions that in the present circumstances we shall have to try and reduce deficit financing over the plan period below the original estimate of rupees 1200 crores. That implies much greater effort at economy in regard to expenditure, both developmental and non-developmental, and greater reliance on other sources of finance, viz. Taxation, borrowing and small savings. The additional taxation measures at the center constitute the greatest prop we have built so far in support of the 7th plan and our developmental effort in general. In the light of the experience, we shall strengthen this prop by administrative and other measures as are required to make it carry the burden of higher and higher levels of developmental outlay. I think, sir, that by taking a large step forward in many directions, we have also created a horizon of reasonably stable expectations with reference to which private industry can make its plan for the future. Sir, it is said the proof of the pudding is in the eating thereof, and only the future will show how far the new orientation that we have given to the tax system will serve the needs of a developing economy. But I submit that in the new system deserves a fair trial, as it makes an honest attempt to reconcile many divergent objectives that need to be reconciled in a fast developing economy. I cannot of course lay claim to having satisfied all tastes. My friends of the opposition parties, for example, feel so strongly about one point that they had to make their views felt in the other house by a division. While much has been done in the sphere of central taxation, a great deal more needs to be done in regard to mobilizing the savings of the people, small and large, whether for the public sector or the private sector. Honorable members will appreciate that the large increase in borrowing from the banks by private business indicates that the problem of finding non-inflationary finance for development is not peculiar to the public sector alone. It is often said by critics of the public sector that the public sector is able to fight what might be called great inflationary threat to finance or the money that is created. But today the position is that much of the improvement that has taken place in the private sector and that is taking place today is dependent on bank credit or credit from financial institutions. Therefore, the cry that government are the major contributories in regard to inflation by spending in the public sector would not be correct. But I do not say that in itself is wrong, because it means some development. It also throws upon the government the responsibility for keeping a more watchful eye on monetary movements than they normally have to do. Therefore, it makes it all the more necessary for us to mobilize the savings of the people and the problem of internal resources for the plan rests on that at the present juncture. My colleague speaking yesterday spoke about small savings, so that I will content myself with impressing once again on honorable members the organizational and other efforts that we must make to promote savings if internal resources are yet to be avoided from becoming a bottleneck in our plan implementation. While I am still on the subject of internal resources, I would like to refer to one point made by our House's financial expert. He complained about the lack of uniformity in the rate of sales tax in different states and suggested the introduction of a comprehensive bill in Parliament to bring about uniformity. The first point to remember in this context is that taxation of sales or purchases inside a state is a state subject, while that sales or purchases in the course of interstate trade is a union subject. As regards the state sales tax, after the coming into force of the Central Sales Tax of 1956, certain goods have been declared to be of special importance in interstate trade or commerce, that is cotton, cotton yarn, coal, etc. On these commodities, restrictions have been imposed on the powers of states to levy tax. The prices of essential commodities are very high and life for everyone is very hard. We live therefore under threats of strikes which, if they come off, are bound to paralyze our development schemes, to say nothing of the inconvenience caused to citizens and the financial loss which the country's exchequer can certainly not support. In view of the steep rise in prices, the Pay Commission is bound to recommend some kind of relief. I personally am glad that a commission has been appointed, because whatever restrictive or penalty legislation is brought in, it can never make for general contentment and well-being, either mental or physical, and without these there can never be any enthusiasm in the hearts of the workers nor any industry on their part. Now, why has there been such a steep rise in food prices, and why is the government unable to control the same? Production figures, we are told, have not gone down. We have had good harvest last year. Then, where has the food gone? Is inflation responsible to a large extent for this debacle, or are our figures for production wrong? And how much of our food grains have gone underground into the hands of black marketeers? Why cannot government bring these antisocial elements to heel? These are questions which have to be faced squarely. Increase in salaries will cost the exchequer hundreds of crores of rupees. Where is the money to come from in addition to what is needed for the plan? As far as salaries are concerned, the time has come, I think, for government to fix a minimum wage for the worker and to give him relief in the shape of free primary education for two of his children, old age pension, free living quarters, fair price shops rather than dearness allowance. I feel the moment anybody's salary is raised, he is inclined to spend more. A socialistic pattern of society means, as I understand it, a society where everyone has food, shelter, clothing, and employment, and equal opportunities for his material, moral, and spiritual development. If the salaries of our workers are fixed at a reasonable minimum and the other relief given to them, I think we shall be fulfilling one of our main objectives, that is an improved standard of life for millions. I have often felt that perhaps we lay too much stress on our big projects. Sir, I have just mentioned the antisocial elements that succeed in hoarding and black marketing our food grains, but if I may be permitted to say so. Anti-social elements have penetrated everywhere. Food and drug adulteration are rampant in spite of laws, and likewise one hears on all sides complaints of bribery, corruption and nepotism, and if we are honest we shall have to admit that integrity and efficiency are our biggest casualties. This sorry state of affairs has to be put right if we are to progress. Of course, efficiency and integrity go hand in hand, as do their opposite numbers. True patriotism demands today more than at any other time high standard of integrity and efficiency, and in their restoration both the public and the government must make common cause. If the public demands standard of integrity from the government machinery, it must set standards of behavior for itself too, for the law breaker or the bribe giver is just as, if not more guilty, as those whom he tempts. Criticism is always easy to indulge in but is not always helpful. Therefore, I put forward certain concrete suggestions last session for the consideration of the finance minister, which in my humble opinion would provide permanent source of revenue in addition to, and in some instances to replace, what he is tapping. The reply which the finance minister was pleased to give to the two suggestions regarding the levying of excise duties on liquor and salt was not convincing, if he will pardon my saying so. I for one do not mourn so much over the loss of revenue to government as I do over the dishonesty that prohibition by law brings in its wake. At the same time, why should the money that the government needs so badly go into the pockets of unworthy elements? Sir, man would accept the hardest discipline if he could be convinced of the rights of the measures imposed on him, but man will always question the validity of rules if he does not know their source, because he can only think morally if he is improved from within. The goal to improve man does not consist in making him go through the gestures of morality. If moral rules are arbitrarily imposed, no matter what their practical value is, they will never fight successfully against the inherent weaknesses of human nature. Educate him, persuade him, show him that you care for his welfare and he will follow you. Bring the heavy hand of the law of the country down on him and he is bound to try to evade it. Stop.